Hi everyone, how you doing? Thanks for coming in. My name's Liam Young. What I want to do tonight is tell you a story of our technology. It's a story called City Everywhere, and it's an attempt to try and get to grips with and to wrap our heads around the strange urban environments and spatial conditions, mirror worlds that we find ourselves in this present moment. Before I get into that story, I thought it might be useful. I don't know how many people in the room know my work, but I thought it might be useful to start with a bit of a prologue, just to kind of set up the story, to talk a little bit about my practice and the way that we work, and then we'll dive in to City Everywhere, and we'll go on a tour through this imaginary city that we all kind of find ourselves living in somehow. So let's get started.
This is iPhone 7. Very brother. Thank you.
So I'm what's described as a speculative architect. What that means is that I don't design buildings, but instead I work between documentary and fiction to tell stories about the global and urban implications of new technologies. So we borrow from the techniques of fiction and film and performance to collect and visualize stories of landscapes and cities, both real and fictional, in order to engage audiences in the strange ways that technology is changing our world. So we cite all of our projects and all of our work within the distributed geologies of the Anthropocene, which is this geological epoch where technology is the dominant force shaping our world. What I want to do tonight is this kind of live storytelling mix that takes us around to the dark side of our luminous screens to see the shadows cast by our glittering cities of technology. In many ways, it's a story of the Anthropocene, and a portrait and a story of what comes next. It's a place that's no longer for us, where we are no longer at its center, but really we're all occupying this city, which is an ecology of machines. A city everywhere, a landscape, a world that's endlessly remade, reshaped, and engineered for and by all of our technologies. So to ground all of these stories, we begin this process of speculation and storytelling in the real world of the present. It's a world assembled from physical landscapes of technology that we explore with the nomadic research studio Unknown Fields that I run from London with another architect, Kate Davies. So Unknown Fields is a nomadic design studio that travels out across all of these territories to explore the landscapes that play a critical role in the shaping of our futures. So we travel behind the scenes of emerging technologies, to traverse global supply chains, to explore the remote and extreme landscapes and territories that our contemporary cities set in motion. So all of the footage that you're going to see tonight is taken by us, captured out in these sites of the Anthropocene. It's a collection of drone footage and hidden camera investigations, interviews, speculative narratives, and a collection of toxic objects, reimagined landscapes, and the cataloguing of distributed matter from these distant sites. So we make provocative objects and films from all of these expeditions, all the while exploring these narratives that somehow coalesce to form this city everywhere. So across the last few years, we've done projects in cargo ships traveling through Asia, tracing all our technologies back to the sites of their production. We've traveled through the irradiated wilderness of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. We've traveled to illegal gem fields and Wild West mining sites cut through Madagascar's rainforests. We've traveled through the mining landscapes of outback Western Australia, or the Arctic ice shelf, and the climate change landscapes of far north Alaska. We bought an old school bus for a road trip through UFO conspiracy theory spaceports and the black military sites of US militarized landscapes. And we travel to all these places because they're iconic sites of this Anthropocene world. They're landscapes that are shaped by the immediacy of phenomena that we see emerging more abstractly in the familiar places that we call home. We map the complex and contradictory realities of the present as this site of strange and extraordinary futures. And then what we do is we take these real sites and we collage them together with the speculative architectures of film that we extrapolate and exaggerate out of them, that I develop in my fiction studio and film studio based in Los Angeles. And here we explore the consequences of all of these emerging trends that we discover out in the field. And we deploy design speculations as imaginative tools to help us explore the implications and consequences of these trends, technologies, and ecological conditions, but also to kind of disseminate this research like Trojan horses buried within the mediums of popular culture, film, and TV. And really, these are the two aspects of my work that I want to kind of bring together tonight, where we animate an alternative world as it means to understand our own world in new ways. It's a form of extrapolating the present to develop a series of counter-narratives, sifting through the detritus of the everyday like kind of archaeologists rummaging through scraps of who we are and realigning these pieces in new constellations to exaggerate the world, to construct new stories from the remains of the moment, to reveal invisible connections, emerging phenomena, and to kind of narrate these strange new worlds. Worlds like this one. This is a film called Where the City Can't See, which is set in a fictional future Detroit. So I'm not going to show any of these films in full tonight, but rather I want to unpack them all and kind of narrate the emerging world of technology in which all of these films are set. So this is a set of films based on our research into the cities and landscapes of what we might call the post-Anthropocene, where machines are now the dominant inhabitants of space and our lives are managed by the algorithms of smart city technologies. So this is the first film shot entirely using LiDAR scanners, which is a data acquisition and surveillance technology upon which much of the smart city systems are based. Driverless cars, for example, navigate and understand the world using this technology. And the film takes place across a single night, where we follow a group of young car factory workers drifting through the city in a driverless taxi. And they are part of an underground community that work on the production lines by day, but at night they adorn themselves in machine vision camouflage to enact their escapist fantasies in these hidden spaces of the surveillance city. And they hack the city and journey through a network of stealth buildings, ghost architectures, glitches, and sprites, searching for the wilds beyond the machine. So let's get started and tour through City Everywhere. City Everywhere is a series of stories and myths that describe this post-Anthropocene world. And I want to take us on a tour through a series of sites, documented moments and vignettes of this new city. A city of the post-Anthropocene digital world that we all call City Everywhere. So in the landscapes of City Everywhere, there is no city and country anymore. There is no center or periphery. There's just this continuous city of technology stretched across the entirety of the earth. Here, architecture is a geologic force, and we've remade the world from the scale of the cell to the tectonic plate. So I want to tell you a selection of tales from these geographies. I'm going to take you through an atlas of sites, and then a series of gadgets and objects that all come together to form a portrait of this emerging city. It's a kind of city symphony that's stitched together from documentary footage of real sites that we've captured with the nomadic research studio on known fields. And then all of these speculative film projects developed out of these conditions. It's a collage of present and future and all the oscillations in between. And we're going to travel through a collection of sites that are organized from the edges of the city, where we're going to see where our contemporary technologies begin their lives. And then we're going to move denser into the core of the city to see ourselves and the strange creatures that we're all becoming. We're going to traverse this infinite city together with the smart city operating system as our guide. And the city smells of hard drives and fiber optics and Red Bull soda. And the urban AI has invited us on a road trip across its technological skin. It's looking forward to showing us around, to visit the sites and structures made for and by its machines, sites of this planetary scaled city where nothing has escaped. And the hard drives hum, and the city gently vibrates. And we head off on our tour. So to begin with our first stop, the city takes us back to the beginning of the beginning, where seconds from 13.8 billion years ago, the creation story of lithium, a fundamental component in all of our technologies, begins. And here we fly along the azure shores of the city's energy pools. We travel through Chile and Bolivia, through a land that's no longer of an indigenous population, but of evaporation ponds of the world's largest lithium mines. So this is the landscape behind the scenes of all the batteries that power our technology. 70% of the world's lithium is here. And as we fly on a stage in California, Elon Musk, the tech evangelist and entrepreneur, proclaims his vision for a green energy future, a world where everything will be solar in 20 years. But like most Silicon Valley preachers, he's presenting to us a seductive future, a hopeful future, but at the same time, it's a decidedly uncomplicated one. Because in reality, he must literally buy Bolivia and evolve it as the new Dubai. Because if the future is electric, then the future is buried here, beneath the salt flats of Bolivia. And as we keep on driving, we see from a clearing in the point cloud mist these kind of cavernous landscapes of all our ephemeral technologies. So it's in these massive mining excavations scattered on the edge of the world that our new city everywhere begins and ends its life. Each of us in this room have a bit of the gold or aluminium from these sites in the smart technologies in our pockets, charged and quietly vibrating. And the digital models of these landscapes that we see on the screen here are linked live to the fluctuations of metal prices on the stock market. And as explosive drills and diggers have replaced the slow erosion of rivers and earthquakes, we see that we're scoring our economy into the archaeological record. These landscapes are also a chronicle of the digital permutations that now drive the modern world. A landscape filled with vehicles that no longer have drivers, but that are just systems. And mining trucks rumble up mountains. And we drive deeper into the dust and we see the rhythms of the human conveyor belts of Madagascar's gem fields. These digging machines excavate the majority of the world's gemstones. In these illegal mines, it's cheaper to pay 20 men in rice than it is to maintain and fuel a mechanical conveyor belt. And a hidden black market supply chain connects two choreographies of city everywhere. One here in these lawless mine sites, and the other in the jewelry stores, hip-hop music videos, and celebrity red carpets across the ocean in the city center. So for the jewelry of city everywhere, we've used the amount of rice the human conveyor belt consumes in a day to manufacture a single synthetic gemstone. The rice is subjected to intense heat and pressure in the lab to produce a diamond that's then set into a gold hip-hop tooth. It's an object that embodies the systems through which these worlds are intimately and profoundly connected. And close by, on our tour, we now end up in the shores of the radioactive lakes of Inner Mongolia. These landscapes sit beside the world's largest rare earth mineral refinery. And from this black sludge, we've made a vase for city everywhere. It's a set of vases made from the amount of radioactive waste created in the production of 3 objects of technology: an iPhone, a MacBook, and a Tesla electric car battery. It's a new material aesthetic for the technologies born of the earth. It's a Ming vase for the city everywhere generation. And from all these landscapes on the edge of the world, our machine geographies, our city everywhere begins to take shape. And in the same area of the city, we now pick at a loose thread of the garment that we're all wearing, and we unravel it across continents, from wardrobe to warehouse, from factory to field, in search of the landscapes behind all of our runway dreams and street blue jeans. So before we wear them, the clothes of city everywhere make journeys of tens of thousands of miles in their process of production, making textiles the most globalized industry on earth. Here on our tour, we now meet the last generation of master weavers and the real gold thread makers. This is a group whose skills will now die with them, because the apprentices they would once train now man the rumbling, mechanized looms of global fashion, raw cotton plugging their ears, deaf to the din of the world around them. So as we span from fashion victim to victims of fashion, for the cloth of city everywhere, We weave here a collaborative textile with the last gold thread maker and one of the last true master weavers in Varanasi. And audio from a series of interviews with them and the sound of their looms has been translated into a binary black and white pattern, which is then woven into the cloth. So this textile becomes an archive, encoded with the skills and stories of a dying craft and woven from the same hands that it's trying to remember. And to make the thread for this textile, we follow the ships that bring fast fashion to our shores all the way to their death, where after their short 25-year lifespan they return to India and Bangladesh to be broken up and salvaged in the shipbreaking yards. So we collected fragments of this raw steel, cut from the rusting carcasses of dead ships on the Bangladeshi shores. We melted it down to form the core of the gold thread. It's a textile archive born from these skeletons of the industry that brought it into being. It's a textile that is trying to communicate to all of us just these stories of this city everywhere. And now this gold cloth covers a young Indian textile worker who's walking slowly on a sacred procession from her home village amongst the cotton fields to the huge mills and factories of the vast textile industry supply chain where she now works. And as she travels through the landscapes of city everywhere, she bears witness to a series of transformations. And she ends here, completely cocooned, standing at the huge container port amongst the mega container ships that will soon export her and everything we wear to the West. So hopefully we can start to see that this city everywhere can no longer be described as a single point on a map. Our technologies cast shadows that stretch across the earth. And now on our tour, we pack up all the objects and materials that are produced in these sites, and we send them off in ships around the world. This is the computer-controlled container fleet of the mega shipping industry that now navigates autonomously based on GPS satellites. And the ship captain and the portside crane operators have been made obsolete, their bodies repurposed as a component in the landscape-scaled robot that stacks the containers ready for transport, bringing all of our goods all the way home. And this is where they end up. On our tour now we see stretching out before us are the endless shelves and storage bins of the Amazon fulfillment centers. The Amazon bookshelves are stacked based on a complex sorting algorithm that's engineered around sales frequencies and buying patterns. And here we watch as Amazon robots rush through the stacks, navigating from book to book, filling orders by following the most efficient route generated for them by their navigational programming. In many ways, this is the library of City Everywhere. It's not organized around the Dewey Decimal System, but by buying habits and aggregated data sets. It's a library that isn't organized for us. It's a space organized by algorithms and inhabited by bodies repurposed as machines, and inhabited by these aerial robots zipping about above our heads, dropping our packages in an Amazon hailstorm, and drifting above the sea of neon haze, or the drones have become as ubiquitous as pigeons. And we customize our drones like we once did our phones, and they follow us around, always with a smile and glistening LEDs and 16mm propeller blades. And the air is filled with the digital confetti of our every desire. And the traffic lights of City Everywhere flock at rush hour. And the rumble of drone propellers becomes a new natural soundscape to this city of a new generation. And all the dogs in City Everywhere are walked by drones. Think of the time saving. And they deliver our pizzas Hot dogs, stuffed crusts is how we like them in city everywhere. And a network of drones now monitor the wayward youth of a London council estate. And we watch as a young girl has hacked and decorated her own drone, and she uses it to pass notes to her boyfriend trapped in the council estate tower opposite. And like kids in an old-fashioned classroom, they scribble graffiti messages on the drones and they send them back and forth between the towers. In this near-future city, drones form these agents of state surveillance, but at the same time they become co-opted as the aerial vehicles through which two teenagers might fall in love. And elsewhere in City Everywhere, another drone armed just with a dildo disrupts a Russian parliamentary session. And in another part of the city, another drone zips overhead, this time armed with a different kind of cylindrical device, en route to attack a village in a country half a world away. And here we're now getting closer to the sites of the city where we find ourselves. And our taxi takes us to the residential districts. So we've been traveling across a giant megastructure in which the entire population of the Earth now live. This is our global city, all connected through the tendrils of the network, the supply chains of technology and the shipping lines that deliver our world. But maybe here we might imagine a different kind of planet city. Here in this area we've reversed the sprawl and we've planned a retreat from all our existing countries into a microcosm of the planet. The world collapsed into a single building. So perhaps one of the solutions to this city everywhere is a place like this, where at the density of Kowloon World City, which is the densest structure that humanity has ever constructed, the entire population of the Earth could live in a city half the size of the Tokyo metropolitan area, and the rest of the planet could be returned to wilderness. It would be a city not just with Chinatown, but with China. Not just with Little Italy, but with Italy itself. That's what it looks like to house all humans.
South Korean woman
and their
got a
attendant
rude awakening when she
infrastructure.
left her robot vacuum to do the cleaning while she took a nap.
And we see
The vacuum cleaner
the different areas of the city. We see the inhabitants living in their apartments, and the fire department rushes past us because in one of the different apartments we see a young woman whose hair is caught in her robot vacuum cleaner. The robot vacuum cleaner mistook her hair for dust and sucked it up, and she became trapped and couldn't move. And in a different area of the city, we hear a scream from another apartment as a young man scans the Heinz ketchup bottle to read about the latest recipe promotion. But instead of being directed to the Heinz website, the QR code he scans takes him to German porn site Fundorado. Because in these cities, we're now sharing our worlds with strange objects, devices that listen to us, that watch us, and that talk back to us. And the world has acquired lives of its own, and we're unwelcome visitors in a world that's created by these machines. So here, we're now traveling through the beating, purring, and whirring heart of this city. Here, we're traveling along the Facebook machines, past all of our messages, photos, inane chatter, hopes, dreams, desires, and darkest fears. These sites are not grand cathedrals, they're not great libraries, but at a time when our collective history is digital and our world is run by these strange living objects, this is our generation's cultural legacy. And perhaps we'll soon write soliloquies for the server aisles like we once did for Rolling Hills. And hidden within the server stacks, the city takes us to visit the render lands and the data farms. And now we drive through the Indian quarter of City Everywhere. So in design studios of the West, architects and directors sketch out their dreams for imaginary cities. While in India, across the other side of the planet, this massive anonymous workforce turn these wireframe worlds into the high-fidelity digital architectures of developer renderings, video games, and Hollywood blockbusters. The city here introduces us to Prakash, a render farm worker, who makes and shapes the digital worlds that all of us inhabit. Here in City Everywhere, Prakash has fallen in love with the digital model of a beautiful Hollywood actress after spending his 14 hours a day endlessly rotoscoping, rendering, and compositing her into blockbuster films. By night, when all the fluorescents are switched off and everyone else has gone home, he straps on his VR goggles and they walk together, hand in hand, through the streets of a city that he's collaged together for them from scavenged visual effects movie models and the leftover 3D game assets that remain on Indian studio hard drives after a studio production in Los Angeles is cancelled. So the digital ephemera of our popular culture is now constructing all of these physical spaces, the data farms, the render farms, all across the world. And all of us exist in this utopia that inhabits the thickness of a screen. We live out our lives in a virtual city that stretches from Los Angeles to Bangalore to the Prineville, Oregon Facebook Center. It's a world of stacked hard drives and rare earth, a world of digitally simulated actors and our outsourced, pixel-projected dreams. So here in our digital city, we now jump into the back seat of a driverless taxi and we head out on safari. And here we see the city through the eyes of the machines that manage it, through this effervescent point cloud, the laser light of our LiDAR scanners. We are remaking our cities and our streets and our spaces not for us anymore, but for the way that these technologies see and understand the world. But in many ways, when we start to look beyond these systems of machine vision and these augmented reality studios and worlds, what we see is that the physical world left behind when everything disappears into the screen or the lens of VR goggles is much like a modern film studio, where we see a new kind of architecture, a new type of ornament based on these calibration markers and machine vision targets. The world is slowly becoming a scaffold and an infrastructure for a digitally constructed world. City Everywhere, when all the augmented reality surfaces and virtual realities are turned off, is an architecture that's lying in wait, ready for the premiere of 1 million animated movies that will illuminate its surface with color and detail. So in many ways, these images from these sci-fi films are what technology promises us. This is the world that we're all supposed to be marching into.
Century 21.
But when we turn off
John
this
Anderton.
augmented world, when we turn off the bespoke billboards of Minority Report's urban spaces, when we turn off the tailored ads, the navigational prompts, the Tinder profiles, the track status updates of our sci-fi cityscapes, we'll see this green screen studio world where everything, every surface, every building has become just a screen. And here we visit another apartment, an augmented apartment in an up-and-coming area of City Everywhere. Here the renderings on developer billboards have become the inhabitable utopias of augmented reality-fueled gentrification. And we listen in to an agent who's showing a client around a digital construction site. Here the physical shell of architecture becomes overlaid and draped with a digital canvas. Things like building debris, unsightly neighbors, all of the things that occupy the physical world that we don't want to think about become reimagined on individual scales where each of us can tune in or out our own architectural realities. Each of us become tuned to our own urban channels. We can download the premium pack, the Star Wars pack, and totally change the reality of physical space through this digital augmented overlay. And we eavesdrop in here to the conversation between the real estate agent who's showing this client this space. She introduces him to some lovely 21st century textures, early Floyd or classic Tilco, or for something really special, she offers him one of their IKEA packs. Very eclectic, very tasteful, 100% uncustomized, she says, as a Google image search box appears behind the door. She taps a few buttons and a daybed winks out of existence to be replaced by a set of side tables in primary colors and a rectangular bookcase. The agent taps some more buttons and a series of blonde and laminate objects start to appear around the space. A low Japanese-style bed overlays the couch, and we see the client sink down into it. His eyes are gleamed over in a pixel glaze. And we jump back into our driverless taxi, and we follow the photons. We follow a trail of pixel breadcrumbs towards a dull roar that's filling the cabin as we drive. We wind down a window. In the distance, we hear an audience screaming and going crazy. Have you ever been to a Hatsune Miku concert, the city says? She's the pop star, the city everywhere generation, a pop star for the machine world. So Hatsune is a 3D projection with a larger fan base than most living musicians. And the crowd wave their glow sticks for this digital ghost of the city. Because Hatsune is the first animated pop star. And just like the Kardashians or the vloggers and Instagram stars, she has no physical presence, she's just a media construction. She's a collection of pixels, just like the apartment we were just traveling through. And now to the beat of Hatsune's hologram, the young ravers of the city dance with explosive contortions as they invent a new choreography that distorts the silhouette of their bodies and disguises the proportion of their frame so as to evade body detection algorithms that's used by the city surveillance cameras. And they reimagine their fashion cycles to follow the rate of Moore's law, or the latest phone model or software update rather than a change in season. And they adorn themselves in anti-facial recognition makeup. And the machine vision camouflage textiles and new hoodies that are designed to be invisible to the scanning technologies of the smart city. And the iridescent textiles reflect the light of CCTV laser scanners to create exuberant glitches and distortions and disturbances in the dataset. We have always found the eccentric and the imaginary in these spaces between the ways that technology sees. And now we've come to the end of our tour and we're sitting back in the taxi that we've been driving through and we see the words Hello City blinking on the dashboard display. Our journey is at an end and the system is rebooting. Through a lot of these technologies, they begin their lives with a Hello World program, which is a super simple computer program that outputs Hello World onto a display system. It's a program that's used to verify that a language or a system or a machine is operating correctly. It's the first word spoken to us by a new system. And Hello City burns onto the screen announcing itself, telling us that everything is going to be just fine. But in many ways, City Everywhere never gave us this warning. We aren't sure how it got here, but we certainly aren't going to let it leave. It's just too seductive and too shiny, too easy. And we see that our technologies, our buildings, our spaces are formed from this planetary scaled machine and infrastructure so large that it has become invisible. A machine so often disguised, ignored, or forgotten behind the gloss of the screen, the seamless aluminium edge, or the glare of the pixel. Ideology in City Everywhere rarely evolves at the same pace as our technology. But perhaps if we can understand and map this continuous urban megastructure, then we can begin to reimagine it, to conjure new stories, new mythologies for this new kind of city.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
And the city wraps us in a warm embrace, and the LEDs blink.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
The streets are lined with sensors and the electromagnetics hum.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better. In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better. In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better. In the future, everything will be smart, connected, and make it all better.
Thanks. That's it.